Everyone thought she was just another widow, quiet, harmless, lost in her memories. Until the day she snapped the colonel's salute, in front of 317 soldiers who froze in disbelief. Before I tell you what happened next, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I love knowing who's listening. The morning sun over Fort Hayden was merciless that day, sharp and golden, cutting through the lines of soldiers assembled on the parade ground. The rhythmic stomp of boots echoed like thunder, every movement synchronized, flawless. At the center stood Colonel Marcus Ellery, a man carved from discipline itself. 40 years in uniform had etched his face with the kind of lines that spoke of war, loss, and pride. And then she appeared, an old woman in a faded blue dress, holding a small envelope against her chest. No insignia, no medals, just trembling hands and tired eyes. She walked through the rows of soldiers with quiet resolve, the sound of her heels against the concrete growing louder in the heavy silence. No one moved to stop her. No one dared. Even the colonel paused mid-command, his eyes narrowing slightly. "Ma'am, this area is restricted," he said, his voice even, controlled. But there was something about her face, a flicker of recognition, a memory tugging at the corner of his disciplined mind. She stopped 3 feet from him, lifted her gaze, and said softly, "You don't remember me, do you, Colonel?" The question sliced through the air. The murmuring among the soldiers grew, whispers like the wind. "I meet many people," he replied, jaw tightening. "You'll have to remind me." Her voice cracked, but her words were steady. "You promised to bring him home. Sergeant Daniel Rowan. My son." A heavy silence fell over the entire base. Even the flag seemed to hang still in the air. The colonel's expression didn't break, but his grip on his cap tightened. "Ma'am," he began, "your son served bravely. He died under your command," she interrupted. "And you never came." Every soldier shifted uncomfortably, unsure whether to look or turn away. There was no protocol for this, no drill for a mother's grief. The colonel stepped forward, lowering his head respectfully. "Ma'am, your son was one of the finest men I've led. We gave him full honors. I wish I could have done more." "You could have," she whispered. "But you didn't." Her hand shook as she held out the envelope, a weathered, yellowed letter with a single line written in a soldier's handwriting. "If I don't make it, tell him she's my reason for coming back." The colonel froze. He knew that line. He had read it once, in a foxhole under gunfire, moments before Sergeant Rowan fell beside him. And now, all these years later, the words came back to haunt him. The woman looked him dead in the eyes. "You told him you'd deliver this. You looked my boy in the face and made a promise." Her voice rose, brittle but strong. "And for 15 years, you never did." The colonel's throat tightened. Around him, soldiers stood motionless, caught between admiration and discomfort. He had no words, only the weight of every broken promise pressing on his chest. Then, in a motion that no one could predict, the colonel straightened, removed his cap, and lifted his right hand. His salute slow, deliberate, filled with something deeper than formality. It wasn't a salute to a superior. It was to her. The air thickened with disbelief. No one had ever seen Colonel Ellery salute a civilian, let alone a grieving mother accusing him of failure. And just as his hand reached its peak, she raised hers too. But instead of returning the salute, she caught his wrist midair. A gasp rippled through the ranks. The colonel didn't flinch. Neither did she. Her eyes burned with unshed tears. "You don't salute me, Colonel," she said, her grip trembling but firm. "You salute him." Then, she turned his wrist slowly, until his hand pointed toward the memorial stone standing behind them, engraved with 317 names, including her son's. The crowd of soldiers instinctively turned their heads, the realization washing over them like a wave. She snapped his hand forward, not in anger, but in a strange, powerful gesture of closure. "He doesn't need your honor," she whispered. "He needed your word." The colonel stood frozen, his hand lowered, his face pale. His chest rose and fell unevenly, not from rage, but from the crumbling walls of pride. "I failed him," he said quietly, voice rough as gravel. "And I failed you." The woman took a step back. "No, Colonel, you just forgot what your uniform was for." Those words hit him harder than any bullet he'd ever faced. Around them, 317 soldiers stood silently, the same number etched in stone. Young men and women, some with tears in their eyes, some looking away, all of them understanding what they were witnessing. Because this wasn't just a confrontation, it was a reckoning. For a long, heavy moment, no one spoke. Then the colonel turned toward the formation and barked a command no one had expected to hear. Fall in. To the memorial. The entire field shifted like a single heartbeat. Soldiers moved, boots striking in perfect unison, forming a massive arc around the monument. He faced them, his voice steady but soft. Every name behind me has a story unfinished, and it's our duty to make sure none of them are forgotten. Then he turned back to the woman. Ma'am, with your permission, I'd like to deliver that promise now. She hesitated, then handed him the letter. The edges crinkled as he unfolded it, that same line staring back at him. Tell him she's my reason for coming back. The colonel took a deep breath and read aloud, his voice breaking slightly near the end. When he finished, he placed the letter beneath her son's name, tucking it into the corner of the stone. And then he saluted again, this time not as a commander, not as a symbol of authority, but as a man who finally remembered what honor meant. One by one, every soldier followed. 317 salutes. A forest of hands raised toward the sky. The sound of their movements, sharp, unified, echoed across the base like thunder rolling through memory. The woman's shoulders shook as she tried to hold herself together. The colonel lowered his arm, took one hesitant step forward, and said softly, "For what it's worth, thank you for reminding me who I am." She looked up at him, her expression softening. "Then don't forget again." The faintest smile crossed her face, not of forgiveness, but of peace long overdue. As she turned to leave, the crowd parted silently, letting her walk through. The envelope still lay against the memorial, fluttering gently in the breeze. The colonel remained standing, eyes fixed on it, until she disappeared beyond the gate. That day, Fort Hayden changed. Orders still echoed, boots still struck, but something deeper had taken root, a kind of respect that couldn't be taught in training or carved into medals. A week later, a new plaque appeared below the memorial. It read, "In honor of promises, kept or broken. They make us who we are." And below it, in small script, a single signature, C. Ellery. Because honor isn't just about the salute you give, it's about the promises you keep. And sometimes, it takes a quiet woman with trembling hands to remind a soldier what courage really looks like. Bold truth line, because courage isn't loud, it's steady, and it shows up when everyone else turns away. Poetic reflection, she walked into a base of soldiers and left behind a storm of silence, the kind that reshapes every heart it touches. If this story moved you, tell me in the comments what you'd have done in her place. And if you believe promises still matter, hit that subscribe button, because here, every story reminds us of the power of truth, one heart at a time.